Now we're all good. So today we're going to B'ezrat Hashem speak about. Today we're learning Leilu Nishmat Avraham ben Chaim Yehuda and Yecheskel ben Avraham. So one of the most important, or no, maybe let me rephrase that. The most important decision that you will ever make in your life is going to be if you're going to be religious or not. Depending on your level of religiosity, of how religious you'll be, that is on one of the top lists of the most important decisions you ever make in your life. Possibly the second will be who you will marry. And I was thinking what would go third. And I was thinking if anything would go between this for the third. And I don't know, maybe there is. This is my own, list, except for the first one. That's not mine. But I would probably say the third one is probably your career choice of what you decide to do in your life. If you think about it, when a person's working, the majority of the waking hours that they are up and they're productive and they're doing something is usually in their job. So that's a huge, a huge decision that you should make. But there's something very different between the religious level that you will be, between the person that you will marry, and the career that you'll go into. And the difference is the first two affects everything. Who you will marry and what is your level of your that you're religious is going to affect everything. It's going to affect how you raise your kids. It's going to affect if you can have kids. It's going to affect your outlook in life. It's going to affect your priorities in life. I mean, the list goes on and on. It affects everything in life. So the first two affect everything. The career, it affects, but not as much. But even more so, the first two is very hard to change. If somebody was born non-religious and they got married and they started raising a family non-religious, of course anything is possible, but it's a difficult move to go and just make everybody religious now. If you married somebody and it turned out, and we'll soon speak about this, to be what you think is a mistake, that is a hard thing to fix. But a career, on the other hand, what you decide to do, that's probably the easiest thing of all of them to be able to fix it. But the question is it something that you should? And in order to explain this question, we have to go back to what we spoke about last week. And we spoke about last week regarding the idea of Hashem closing doors. So you have to think about it like this, that you try to do something and it's not successful. Then you try to do something else and it's also not successful. And then you do a third thing, a fourth thing, and for some reason it's not successful, not successful, not successful. Until finally you get something and you realize, wow, it was so successful and all of my failures actually helped me, because if I wouldn't have failed in the previous failure endeavor, then I would have ended up pursuing that. But because I failed in the four previous things, now I finally ended up to my my golden door, my place where I really need to be. This could be in anything. It could be in business. You try one business, fails, one other business, and then finally you hit it and it was extremely successful. It could also be in dating. You date. Now, and all of a sudden you find the perfect person and all of a sudden everything is amazing. So this, in hindsight, how we say hindsight is 20/20, this is great and it works out, and sometimes it works out beautifully. I remember the story that I said over before years ago, where you had a girl that was dating a guy that was perfect. Everything was amazing. Everything was unbelievable. And she thought she was getting engaged. And she thought that's it. It was the end. And then at the end, right when she thought it was supposed to happen, the guy broke it off. Before they engaged, when she thought everything broken off. And she's like, what are you doing? Hashem, what are you doing to me? After everything that I've been through. After finally I found a normal guy, what are you doing? And she felt very hurt. She felt very bad about her situation. Fast forward 2-3 years later, she ends up finding another guy. She ends up getting married to that other guy. And it turns out well. Everything works out well. But the bigger picture was when she found out that the guy that she almost married ended up marrying somebody else, but that guy had some serious issues. Some anger and gambling issues, major issues, and he ended up getting divorced. And all of a sudden, in hindsight, now the girl is like, wow, Hashem saved me twofold. Number one, I got a better guy. Number two, I was saved from a disaster. So in hindsight, sometimes it's amazing. Everything works out perfectly. Everything works out amazing, and it works out great. But what happens, what we spoke about last week, if it doesn't work that way? What happens if you get into a marriage, and the marriage is not great, and the marriage is pretty bad, and he's like, you know what? And you start thinking back, you know what, I dated other people. If only I would have married that person, it would have been much better. And then you find out that other person that you dated, oh, he is the best husband in the world. How do you find it out? Of course, because you are on Instagram troll and you know everything about everything in their life, and you know everything about the Facebook and the whatever it is, everything in between, all the other social media. You know everything. And you're like, this guy's perfect. To put matters on top of matters, this guy ended up becoming a multi-billionaire and the president of the United States of America and of Israel and of the Rosh Hashiva, and he's like the best of everything. You'd be like, wait a minute, what happened over here? Like, I had that and I lost it all. So sometimes you feel like, okay, sometimes it's nice. Hindsight 2020, great, everything great. I married the right guy. The other guy was a loser. The other guy was gonna, fall apart. I'm good. But what happens if the other guy was not the loser? What happens if you married the loser? Chas v'shalom, you never married the loser. But what happens if you think that way? What is your thought process? Now, the correct thought process should be, and again, obviously speak to a rabbi in whatever situations, but in general, the thought process is that I married who I was supposed to marry, and I married who I needed to marry, and I married who I was intended to marry. This was the one who was for me. This was the bashar, this was the one who was for me, and now I have to do everything that I can to be able to go and make it work. That is your mindset, and that should be the correct mindset. Not that, oh, I messed up, I should have married. No. Who you married, that's who you're supposed to marry. Now, with that thought process, when we go into career paths or career choice, is that the same thing? Is it if you go down a certain path, do you all of a sudden start thinking, well, wait a minute, Hashem sent me down this path, which is true. Hashem, put me in this career choice, and maybe I should just stick it out. Okay, I'm getting abused, maybe I'm working too much, maybe it's not a good environment, there's a lot of things, but Hashem put me over here, so maybe I should stay in the same mindset as in the marriage. So, the idea behind this is something that is not something that I could give a clear-cut answer to everybody, because every situation is different. But we're going to try to build a little bit of guidelines, a little bit of guidance to how to go about doing it. And that is that if, let's say, you're in a situation, and maybe you should look for a different career. Maybe you should look for a different path. Again, this is what you're spending most of your waking hours, unless you're sitting and learning Torah all day, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless you ad bli dai. But if you're not, and you're in the work field, so you have these questions, these thoughts come up. And I'll tell you my philosophy before we go on to what I would like to go and explain. My philosophy has been, and this has been my philosophy for many, many years, and this is a philosophy that I try to stick by both in the spiritual sense and the physical sense. And the philosophy is that we always have to capitalize on opportunities. If we have an opportunity, we have to capitalize on it. And if we don't, we'll regret it, we'll mess it up, and we need to capitalize it. And it goes in everything. It goes for work, it goes for business, it goes for spiritual growth. Like, I remember, Baruch Hashem, I was zocha to be able to, I had, two very famous Rosh Hashivas. When I was in Mir Yeshiva, I learned under Reb Shmuel Birnbaum. And when I was in Torah, I learned under Reb Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg. Both, Gedolim. And now, unfortunately, they're no longer with us. And I'm always, when I look back and I'm like, had I realized the opportunities, I would have capitalized so much. I probably would have bugged both of that. I probably would have done so much more, than, even when I was sitting and let's say Reb Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg was giving his Mishnah Berurah share or whatever it was, I would have asked so many more questions if I would have just realized, if I would have capitalized on all opportunities that I had. And it works also in business. Sometimes there's investment opportunities or business opportunities or career choices that come across our path, and we have to make a choice. And sometimes that choice is pushed to one way because of laziness or because of something else and not because of the correct things. And we have to realize we have to really capitalize on our opportunities. But that being said, let's keep that in mind in the back of your head, but now let's focus on the more important aspect, which I would like to share with you with the Gemara. There's a Gemara in Kedushin, page 82a, that says, Rabbi Meir says, Lo'elam yelamed adam livnai umnais nikia v'kalam. A person should always go and teach their son a career path, a job that is clean and easy. Nikia v'kala. And the Gemara goes on and says that there's no trade that does not include both poverty and wealth. You can become rich, says the Gemara, from any profession. Poverty is not a particular trait, and wealth is also not from a particular trait. Rather, it's from the merit, and it's all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's all from the one above. That's what it ultimately depends on. So let's try to go and explain. This is what the Gemara says. Let's try to explain it. So the Gemara goes and says that you should teach your child a profession that's nikia v'kala, clean and simple, clean and easy. What does that mean? So number one, clean is physically clean. Meaning that, as an example, there used to be a profession, I'm sure there still is, but now mostly it's taken over by machinery, and that is tannery. What's tannery? Tannery is where you take skin of animals and you process them. It's a very smelly job, it's a very dirty job. If you could just, I know it's a girls' class, so I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm probably going to do this. But imagine what that process is. So you have a carcass, an animal in front of you, and you have to remove the skin. Now, if it was a man's class, I would go into very graphic detail on how to do that. And the guys would be like, wow, that's amazing. But if I would do that in this class, I have a feeling that most of the screen is going to disappear and everyone's going to go barf and probably not come back after that. So I'm going to leave it to your imagination, but it wasn't a very, I don't want to say dignified, but it was a very smelly, dirty job, to say the least. Whoever took, any biology in any, college and they had to dissect any animal can just basically understand, that concept. I remember I had a guy that told me once he was in college, and there was a guy, they were taking biology and they were dissecting a cat, if I'm not mistaken. It was either a cat or a pet. I'm pretty sure it was a cat. And one of the guys, afterwards at the end, one of the guys in the back took the skin off the cat. Let me just explain this. That wasn't a requirement in the class. The class wasn't like, okay guys, let's see how good you are in scalping skin off this, fur. No. It was figure out where the heart is, tell me where the kidneys are, the digestive system, or something along those lines. But there's one guy in the back that literally skinned the cat. And when the guy told me this, I was like, that's like this serial killer alert. That's something like, okay, wait a minute. There's something going on over here. When you're all of a sudden, I understand getting a little investigative, but when you're doing a beautiful job skinning an animal when it wasn't necessary, that's where you should start, a little bit of introspection, maybe a little bit of hisbaidus, go into the forest without any weapons, and maybe contemplate on your life and the importance of, what you should do. The last thing you want is some guy walking, next to you and be like, wow, you see that cat over there? Yeah, that's some good skin. I can make a good hat out of that. Yeah, that's somebody who you would probably prefer to not be alone with. Okay, anyways, so now, going back to the idea of a profession that's clean, so tannery, for example, is a profession that's not so clean. You're processing skins, you're skinning an animal, but not only in the physical sense the Gemara is referring to, but also in the spiritual sense. The spiritual sense is, for example, you should have a clean environment. You shouldn't work a place where there's pritzas, where there's, immodesty, inappropriate dress, vulgar language. All these things affect a person. They affect your environment. And it could blah, blah, English and center. It could affect you very, very much. And you have to take that into consideration of what you're doing. And some people it's very difficult for them to leave. And you really have to think about it. If it's affecting you, then it may be appropriate for you to leave. Of course, if the company is involved in dishonesty or anything else, that's also a very big problem. There are businesses out there, which I don't want to name per se, in the finance world, where they charge exorbitant amount of interest, and they don't trick the customers. They tell the customers it's just a one-time fee, blah, blah, blah. They circumvent it in so many ways, but they're really robbing the person blind, unfortunately. They're going and they're charging an exorbitant amount of interest, and they're switching it in certain ways, and it really destroys and cripples people. So you have to be very careful from these type of things. Also in jobs where people don't know about the product. I mean, have you ever gone to a mechanic? I guess this is even more so, I shouldn't say for all women, but for a majority of women. You ever gone to a mechanic and the mechanic goes and be like, hey, listen, your cylinder is running backwards. It really should be going sideways. Forwards is okay, but backwards is terrible. It's not good for gas mileage. You're like, I didn't even know I had a cylinder in here. What should I do? So the cylinder needs to go into the square, and the square needs to go into the circle, and the circle goes into the pistons, and the pistons shoot out the fire, and then you have rainbows that come out, and that's how your car drives. Of course, there's a little leprechaun in the back that goes and gives some magical incantations, and then it goes out. I'd be like, wait, what? I'd be like, yeah, it's only $250 to fix. You want me to fix it? I guess so. I didn't know. Then the mechanic goes and be like, listen, you should really have an engine over here. You're like, well, I don't have an engine. How did I get over here? You have an engine, but you have one engine. What is one engine? Not for gas mileage. You should have 4 engines, one for each tire. That's what's going to make the car go much better. Also, you have some mayonnaise under the oil cap. I don't know what's going on over there. You're like, wait a minute, mayonnaise? I'd be like, yeah, have you ever eaten salad in the car? I'd be like, I guess I'm running to work and I get some salad. Well, what happens is the vents suck up all that fluid that comes from the compression over there, and then the pistons condense it, and then they push it into the oil cap, and then you have mayonnaise. And you're like, what? I don't know. It's only $350.54 if you want plus labor, which is $7,000. If you want, I can fix it. Otherwise, you might blow up the entire Manhattan if you're driving past by. I think it's appropriate for you to do. Also, you have breaker fluid, lighter fluid, and headlight fluid that you need to fix. Be like, lighter fluid? What do I need lighter fluid for? I'm not barbecuing. How do you think your lighter works? So you go over. Have you ever gone through this thing and you have no idea what they're talking about? I mean, I've literally, sat through. I've been to the mechanic, and the mechanic will be like, you see your rotors? And I'm like, I have no idea what rotors are. And he's pointing to something on the wheel, and I'm like, yeah, rotors, right, yeah, I follow you, yeah, rotors. He's like, yeah, they're supposed to be parallel, not perpendicular. They have to be over here, otherwise it's shifting, and that's why it's going to break. I'd be like, I don't know what this guy is talking about. I have no idea. The pads are supposed to be here. All your tires are on backwards. They have to be flipped around and turned upside down and go over here. And they're going on. And if you don't know anything about the situation, you'll be like, okay, wait a minute. They could charge you anything. And unfortunately, it's known. Unfortunately, you go to certain mechanics, and they go and they start ripping you off because you have no idea what you're talking about. And this goes for everything. It could be in construction, it could be anything. Have you ever gotten this wonderful, blissful, best part of the day phone call where you get, this beautiful, amazing, unbelievable phone call for, to get your car's extended warranty? Is it only me? Have anybody else got in that? About 7,000 or 8,000 times an hour, right? So you have this guy that calls you up, Kumar is sitting over there and wants to send you extended warranty for a car that you had 7,000 years ago in a previous life, and you'd be like, wait a minute, why? Maybe you're gonna need to change the transmission and the 4 tires and the oil and the mayonnaise. You can't forget about the mayonnaise. We'll take care of the mayonnaise for you, and we'll throw some salad in there, and you'll have a whole lunch. Maybe you should come with us for only $5.99 per month, and you're going to go, no, by the way, I got to tell you. I don't know why I'm going on such a tangent, but I gotta tell you, you want to know the best time to be able to work on your midot? The best time. The best time is when you have Mr. Patel calling you from India to ask you about your extended car warranty, and if you're happy with it, and maybe you want to switch. And instead of going and saying a few choice words and saying, blessing him with him and his mother, you should go and say, you know what? You could work on it for a second, be like, okay, wait a minute. Can you please, maybe remove me from your list? I'm not really interested in it. There's a moment where you're like, the 7th or 8th, time, you might want to get a little bit upset, but you realize it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity where you could stop for a second and you could utilize that to grow. Maybe ask Mr. Patel how his day is doing. You're upset. You imagine how much, what that guy goes through. He has to call me every single day, he calls so many people every single day. What do you think is the percentage of people that he actually gets to sign on to his extended car warranty? Who's signing up already on the phone for that? Even though some of them may be scam artists and they want your social security number and all that, and I'm not giving them any credit to them, but they, they're sitting on their work and every time getting shot down one after another. Maybe next time you say that, say, listen, first of all, how's your day? And then they're going to be very confused. And then you could tell them, please remove me from your list. Just utilize those moments to maybe grow on your midot. Now, I'm not saying keeping them on for the next hour to tell them about your problems and utilize this time for your free therapy. But during these stressful, annoying, moments, you could utilize it to grow with your midot. But in any case, going back to our situation before we went way off to the left field, is that there are so many business opportunities that are maybe a little bit sketchy. Or maybe you could act in a little bit sketchy. Yeah, sell them an extended warranty. They don't know what it is, but it's fine. Let's go outside of that. There's so many things that come out, but maybe you should go, and if you realize if it's not the kosher way, you should stay away from that. Maybe you should stay away from the business. Maybe you should stay away from the philosophy, whatever it is, but you have to go and stop for a second. If this is not correct, this is not the way that I need to go, and I need to handle my business. But what is the problem? Problem is people feel pressured. They need to make money. I got bills. I remember speaking to single guys, 18, 19 years old. They're like, Rabbi, I got bills. I'm like, what? You live with your parents. What bills do you have? I got my cell phone and a 7-Eleven Slurpee. I got like bills. But like you need like $6 a week to survive, because you have everything else, and that's a luxury. Like, what do you need bills for? Like, go sit and learn. Go to the yeshiva. What are you sitting over here and trying to work and selling me car insurance or whatever it is? Go do something else with your life. Like, for a little bit, you don't have the bills. But people feel pressured, and what happens when people feel pressured? They want to make money, and they do things that maybe is not so kosher, not so straight, not so correct. There was once a man that was traveling through the desert. And he was very, very thirsty. And he felt he was dehydrated, he was going to pass out. Until finally he came across a pit with salty water. And he didn't want to pass over it, so he quickly went and he drank and he drank and he drank up this dirty, salty water. He felt a little bit rejuvenated, felt sick to his stomach, but a little bit rejuvenated. He continues walking. And about 300-400 feet later, he sees a flowing river with clear, sweet, pure water. How disappointed is he that he filled up on this disgusting salty water when he had this pure, running, clear spring water. He was in Poland, and Poland spring was right there. Even though that's not where it's from, that's a joke. But he saw there was a beautiful spring, a clear spring that he could have drank the most delicious water. But yet he didn't go, and he didn't, because he went and he took the first thing that came on him. This is how we have to feel, that if sometimes there's an opportunity that comes to us, and even though we have to capitalize, and no, we don't have to, we should capitalize on every opportunity, but sometimes the opportunities are not so kosher. Sometimes the opportunities are not so great. Sometimes the opportunity is not the right opportunity that you should do. And that you have to have emunah b'tachon and wait for a sweeter option. Wait for a better option. Wait for a more kosher option. However, there's the flip side of that. And the flip side is that you have people that have good opportunities that come in their way. Whether it's shidduchim, whether it's panasa, whether it's yeshivot, whatever it is, anything. And they give it up. Why? Just not ready, not good enough. I could do better. Like maybe sometimes tomorrow, yesterday, I have a phone call from my warranty guy. Hi Kumar, how are you? We have all our excuses in the book. We have everything that that we need. But sometimes there is a fine line that we have to balance. And the balance is, and this is the secret of life, the balance. Everything in life is a balance. And the balance is, you have to think about it. Like, when am I going to go for it and when am I not going to go for it? What is the right choice for me to do? Chazal tell us that there are certain, at least in the times in the Mishnah, there are certain professions that are good to be avoided. For example, shopkeeper, a donkey driver, or shepherd. The reason for that is that these particular professions, there is an easy opportunity to cheat. Rabbi Yehuda goes and says that donkey drivers are the mostly wicked. Camel drivers are mostly good, and sailors are mostly pious. Like, wait, why is that? Donkey drivers are mostly wicked. Camel drivers are mostly good, and sailors are mostly pious. You realize it goes from lower from donkey, a little bit higher is to the camel drivers, and then to the sailors. And the answer is, so first of all, donkey drivers, they easily and they usually overcharge. So they're considered mostly wicked. Camel drivers, they spend a lot of time in the desert. And in a place in the desert, survival is not easy. And what happens if your survival is not easy? What happens if you're in a situation that is tricky, that is difficult for you? So you have to go and you have to, figure something out, and usually that ends up with a little bit of prayer. Have you ever been to the desert in the dark? Like at nighttime, it's not dark. It's pitch black. It's cold. You hear a noise, and all of a sudden you don't expect anything. Because if you're in the forest and you hear a noise, okay, fine, there's animals. In the desert, there's not that many. There are animals, but there's not that many. I remember one time, I guess you could call it desert. One time I camped out with me and my friend outside of Masada, and we slept there overnight, and there is a campground over there. But for whatever reason, probably because it was the middle of the winter, we were the only fools that decided to camp then, because nobody else was there. It was just us in a tent. The whole situation was a bunch of 18-year-olds or 19-year-olds going to figure out a camp in the tent. We brought tuna cans to eat, but we didn't bring a can opener. So, we had all this food sitting right in front of us. Don't ask. We tried to grill cheese by putting cheese on fire. It was like crazy. It was the stupidest things. But anyway, so we're sitting over there, and I walked out of the tent, and it was pitch black. And I was like, oh wow, so cool. But then all of a sudden I hear a noise. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like, that should not be happening. I'm not moving. And there's a noise over here. And there's like nobody else. It was me, my friend. My friend was in the tent. So thankfully I had a flashlight over there. I shine a flashlight and I turn around, and I see about in like maybe 15, 20 feet ahead of me, there's a fox with his head in the food, which we very smartly left out for the fox to eat. And I'm sitting over there in the middle of nowhere with a flashlight pointing at this fox, and this fox is in the middle of eating, and then it sees the light, so it looks at me, and I'm looking at it, and it's looking at me, and I'm like, what do I do right now? Like, I have never learned, like, are foxes even dangerous? I don't know. Their tails are really long and really fluffy. Like, I don't know, but it just kind of looks a little bit like a wolf. Like the whole thing is going in my mind, like, what am I supposed to do? So I slowly back out, and the fox is just like, it's like a zone into me. It's like, no, like you walk into a Kabbalist, and the Kabbalist looks at you, and then he sees your soul. This fox was looking into my soul. Like, it was like the eye contact was probably the most disturbing part of it all. Like, and not only that, have you ever shined a light? Their eyes are like red. Or like, it was a very interesting situation. And I slowly backed away, went into the tent, zipped up, and stayed there and like, I probably didn't move for that. It was the most uncomfortable sleep also. But it was like something that was, beyond it. But what was I doing at that time? Like, ain't no milvade, ain't no milvade, ain't no milvade, stay back, ain't no milvade, shir la malas, like, and then this fox is looking at me. So you get stuck in the desert, you get stuck over there, it could get a little scary, especially when you come, face to face with an animal that you don't know how to take care of, and you don't know what to do, and you don't even know a polar bear. You're supposed to go up, you're supposed to be like a baby. You don't know what to, you're supposed to scream, I have no idea. I didn't read the instruction manual for Masada to go on how to survive a fox attack. You get a little bit scared, so what happens? You start davening. So that's why the camel drivers are mostly in the desert. Mostly in the desert, survival is not easy. Besides the foxes, you have the scorpions, you have the mountain lion, you have so many other animals over there that's very scary. So they're sitting over there and they're davening to Hashem so much of the time. So hence, what do we see over here? That the camel drivers, the Gemara goes and tells us, that are mostly good. But the Gemara goes on and says that sailors are mostly pious. It's a step even higher. Sailors is even more scarier. Again, I'm not talking about when you go on a cruise ship, which is basically a city on water. But if you go on, in the olden days on a ship, there is no way, even nowadays, there is a huge wave. There's no like, oh, let me go around it. There's no, like if there's a wave that's coming to you, you're going up with the wave and then you're going down with the wave. And that can be pretty scary. Even if it's just 20 feet, that's really scary. And there are waves that are much higher than that in certain storms. A storm comes, like how are you going to deal with that? You fall into the water. Who knows what the shark-infested waters? And back then, people, they believed in mythical creatures. They saw, there was dragons and who knows what under the water. They were very scared. So they were constantly scared. They were all alone in the ocean. At least in the desert, you're on dry ground. Over here, they're in the water. So what do they, a lot of times they go and they sit and they pray. So that's why sailors are even more on a higher level. They're considered mostly righteous. Why? Because they're sitting and they're praying all the time. So we see over here, there are certain professions that can cause you to be closer to Hashem. Now again, I'm not saying that you should become a sailor or a camel driver or anything like that to do that, but we see over here that this has a strong effect on your spiritual well-being, on your spiritual level. There was once a controversial figure who was opposed by Rav Shach, by Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and Rav Shmuel Auerbach. And due to his hashkafa, there was a certain avrech, there was a certain kollel guy that his wife got an opportunity to work in one of the schools that he was affiliated with. So he went to Reb Chaim Kanievsky to ask him if they could go take a job at this person's school because he doesn't have the best hashkafa. So Reb Chaim Kanievsky heard the question and he said, no, she cannot work in the school no matter what. So the avrech and the wife, they accepted the psak and they started searching for a job. But everywhere they searched, dead end. They couldn't find anything. A month before the school year started, the wife was ordered another job by a private school that was also affiliated with the individual, but not directly. So like kind of affiliated with this individual that was, not the best apple in the tree, but not directly. So they went back to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and they consulted. So Reb Chaim Kanievsky goes and says, it's not prohibited, it's not asul, but from a parnasa standpoint, you're not obligated to take this job as part of your hishtadlut. You're not obligated. So, all right, he started thinking about it. He said he didn't give him a straight no, didn't give him a straight yes. So this avrech, his friends was telling him, you know what, you could really take it, you need the money, we can't be left without anything. He decided to decline the job. He says, if Reb Chaim, I'm not messing with it. Reb Chaim Kanievsky, the Gadol Dar, said something, I'm taking that to the bank. Even though it was kind of an aside thing, I'm not going to lose out from it. 1 week before school started, 1 week, they were left without a job, 1 week. And the wife got a frantic call from a local Beis Yaakov that they were desperately looking for her, and they gave her everything that she wanted and more. And she accepted the job over here. Why? Because she didn't want to go and cut off on her priorities, things that were important, things that were required, things that were maybe halachically incorrect. She decided that she was going, and by the way, you know how difficult that is? You have a family, you have bills, not 18-year-old bills. You have family, real bills that you have to go and pay. And you say, no, I'm not going to take it because it's not right. That's a high level. But that's the correct level that we should all aspire to. That's something that you should be, that'd be like, wait a minute, if this is not kosher, this is not correct, then maybe we shouldn't take this. The Gemara Kedushin goes on and says that it should be Nikiya B'Kala, clean and simple. So we spoke about clean. Now what about Kala, the simple, the easy aspect? The easy aspect, the Mefarshim will go and explain us, that your job shouldn't be on your mind all day. It should not distract you from your spirituality. If you can't focus on spirituality, that's not good. Your mind should be preoccupied with the spirituality. Sometimes you have people that while they're sitting and they're working, they're fully focused and working. But while they're doing spiritual, while they're davening, while they're learning, while they're whatever it is that they're doing in the spiritual aspect, what are they thinking about nonstop? They're thinking about their business. They're going davening Shemona Esrei, and they're thinking about the business meeting, and then they're thinking about the future business meeting, and then thinking about the vacation. They're thinking about all these things. It should be the other way around. You should always be thinking about the spiritual side, not always about the financial side. So Kala, simple. What is simple? Simple means that it doesn't preoccupy your whole entire day, or that's maybe something that you should take as a personal growth aspect, that it shouldn't preoccupy your entire day, and you should be able to focus on the spirituality when you do need to focus on the spirituality. The Mishnah goes, the Gemara goes and continues. What should one do afterwards? One should then daven to Hashem for support. After whatever profession they decide to get into, whatever job you decide to get into, you have to go and you have to daven. Why? Because every profession has rich and has poor. And there's one source only that is going to decide if you're going to be from the poor or from the rich. And that is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to determine your assistance. You can have a surgeon who went to 12 years of school and then due to multiple lawsuits was laid off. Couldn't work in that. Ended up driving a cab. I don't know. Whatever. Doing something else. Flipping shish kebab. Whatever it was, because they couldn't get to whatever it is because of the multiple lawsuits. And then you have a taxi driver who started off as a cab driver, but ended up saving enough and bought a medallion for a yellow cab. And then he bought, this is before Uber came out when it was worth something. And then he went and he bought more, and then he ended up having a fleet of taxis, or a fleet, whatever it is that he went. You have somebody on the highest end of the spectrum that ended up falling into the lowest end, and then you have someone from the more of the lower end that ended up going to the higher end. We have Emunah and B'tachon that on Rosh Hashanah, Hashem decrees exactly what you're going to earn. And it's very interesting. You see people, and I've seen this, where you have, let's say, for example, a bus driver that was making, money, driving a bus, and he ended up, saving a little bit of money. He ended up buying a bus, and then he bought another bus, and he started off as a bus driver. Now he has a whole fleet of buses. I'm talking about yellow school buses. This is a story in Brooklyn. You have, that he became successful from that. There was a guy by the name of Ronald Reed. Ronald Reed was a janitor and a gas station attendant. And that's what he was like the whole time. It wasn't like he was a gas station and then he became CEO of Exxon or whatever. No, he was a janitor and a gas station attendant. At his death, they found out that he was worth nearly $8 million. He invested in stocks over here and there, nothing like crazy. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu could give wealth to whatever it is. You could be a janitor, you could be a gas station attendant, and you could be worth $8 million. You could be a doctor, and you could be in the hole for $8 million. You could be a lawyer, and you could owe $60 million for lawsuits and who knows what that went against you. Hashem can make you rich despite what you have. Of course, we have to take this into consideration. And, if you have a family of 12, you can't be like, okay, let me take a newspaper route, and hopefully Hashem will save you. You have to make reasonable, obligations. There was once an avrech, that a kollel guy that once managed to buy a small apartment, And their means was limited. His wife worked until noon when she had to pick up the kids, and he sat and he learned. But he was like a serious learner. He wasn't like one of those like sat and learned, went to smoke, sat and learned a little bit, went to smoke, went to smoke, went to smoke, sat and learned, went to smoke. Had a coffee, went to smoke, sat and learned, went to smoke. He was a person that learned, and learned. No breaks. To the point is that he went in the morning. He didn't come home for lunch, and he didn't even come home from dinner. He came home at 10 o'clock at night. And his wife wanted to. His wife wanted to go and sit and learn. 5 days a week, that was his schedule. They were able to buy an apartment. And for whatever reason, they didn't realize that they had to pay a certain amount of taxes on their purchase. Some time went by, and interest compounded. And they owed, all of a sudden, the IRS in Israel, or whatever that is, they reached out, to him that he owed a considerable sum of money, and at this point, this is story going many years ago. They owed 20,000 shekels, and they have to pay it in full. Otherwise, their home is going to be put up for sale to cover the debt. So, the husband is thinking, he's like, what, 20,000 shekels? It's a lot of money. How am I going to make that? And it was a very short period of time. There was no way that he was going to make it. So, okay, maybe if I go and I start doing tutoring jobs. He says, there's no way I'm going to make 20,000 shekels, during that time. And they had no savings. His wife worked, until noontime, and then she had to pick up the kids. There was no other option. So they were figuring out what they should do, and they were thinking about it. There was no option. They couldn't work more unless he leaves learning and he goes to find the job. But even that, he's not going to make that amount of money in the time it's due. So the next day, he goes over to his wife, and he shared with her an idea. He goes and he says that the Torah tells us that whoever takes upon himself the yoke of learning Torah, Hashem takes away the yoke of Parnasa. Hashem takes away, you increase your Torah, the Mesiras Nefesh, that part that you need to go work, that's going to be taken care of it. And he quoted the Chazal, the Gemara, that goes and says in Avodah Zarah, page 19b, anybody who toils in Torah will be successful in their property. So he goes over to his wife, and he says, listen, I come every night at 10. He's already a huge maspid. But he said, maybe I need to extend myself a little bit more. Maybe I should take upon myself to learn until 10:30. Instead of 10, I'll learn for 10:30. And that, hopefully, that merit will cause us to be able to fix whatever issue we're dealing with. So she was willing. She was a righteous woman. She realized the importance of learning. And she said, fine, you have yourself a deal. So the first night, instead of coming home at 10 o'clock, he comes home at 10:30. The second night, he's sitting in the Bet Midrash. He's sitting and learning over there. It's 10:15, a time where he would normally be home. And all of a sudden, someone comes into the Bet Midrash and starts looking around. And he sees this guy learning. He walks over to him and he says, I've been looking you for weeks now. For weeks I've been searching for you. He says, finally I found you. He says, a while ago you told me, we were talking, and you told me that you know of a certain apartment that's available. He says, and I told you, I'm in need of a large apartment. He's looking for 8 bedrooms, which is something that's hard to find. So in America, especially also in Israel. So he says, I've been looking, you said you know something, do you have any, can you give me the information? So he said, yeah, sure, not a problem. You knew a certain person that was looking to rent, sell, whatever, as a certain apartment. There's a large apartment. Takes down a pen and paper, gives him the information, hands it over to this guy. So the guy says, I appreciate it, and I just want to let you know that if anything comes out from this, I will compensate you, just like I would have compensated a real estate agent. So he says, okay, fine. He didn't think twice of it. He continues learning till 10:30, and that goes on for the next week. A week goes by, and this guy comes into the Bet Midrash again. 10:15, he's looking at the guy. He finds him sitting and learning in the corner over there. He goes over to him, and he says, I want to thank you for everything you did. We looked at the apartment. I called the guy. I looked at the apartment. He says, I liked it so much, I didn't want to rent it. I wanted to buy it. And right now we're under contract to buy it. And the guy says, wow, Mazal Tov, unbelievable, amazing. I'm so happy for you. And the guy says, no, but that's not what I came here for. I told you, I'll give you, if I would have had to gone through a real estate agent, I would have had to pay a fee. I want to pay you the fee now. And the guy takes out a checkbook and writes him out a check and says, this is what it would have cost me if I would have gone with a real estate agent, and here I want to give this to you. The guy's like so thankful. He's like thinking, what is he going to give me? 500 shekels. He takes the check. It's for exactly 20,000 shekels. Exactly the amount that he owned. Now the story doesn't end over there. This Avrech goes over to Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein. He goes over to a big rabbi, and he says, is the money mine? Is the money rightfully mine? There's so many lessons that we can learn from this, but if you just pause it for a second, you have a guy that's in desperate need for money or he's going to lose his house. And someone hands him a check, the golden ticket. He hands him a check that's going to solve all his problems. And instead of just taking the check, running to the bank, depositing it, and be like, yeah, it's fine. You know how we make excuses in our heads. Everything is always okay. We have reasons to do everything. Yeah, no, it's fine. I need to go to the club to be mekarev somebody, not physically, spiritually. I got to go and make sure the hechsher is very good at this bar. I'm going to say a dvar Torah at this mixed co-ed event because, it's important to go. And, there's stuff that goes on in people's minds. To the point is that I've even spoken to people that were dealers, not car dealers. I'm just going to let your imagination run you what type of dealers they were. And they somehow were doing chesed Hashem. No, they're anxious. Heroin is good for whatever. They're so tired. They need a cocaine to learn the level of life. And, sitting over there. People can convince themselves of crazy things. Yet you see over here somebody that's sitting and learning, did something right. What does he do? And is it mine or not? Is it kosher? He goes and he runs over to Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein. Before he cashes the check, can I take the money? So Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein said, yeah, you could take the money, it's yours. And then he asked him another question. He says, Rabbi, I took upon myself to learn an extra half hour. How long should I keep on this, this extra learning? So the rabbi told him, he says, keep it on till the end of the Zman, to the end of the semester, in I guess the English explanation of Zman, till the end of the semester, and then you could go back to your normal thing. But when I read this story, I was like there were so many. First of all, you could really break apart this story and learn so much. You have somebody who's going through such a stressful situation. Generally, when people are going through stressful situations, the last thing they want to do, okay, let's learn a little bit more. Have you ever been stressed and be like, hey, you want to learn some Mesilas Yesharim? Why don't we learn some Pirkei Avos? And be like, what? No, I have an exam that I'm not ready for. I don't know, I'm going to get, who knows what's going to be. How do you even have... This is somebody who's sitting and learning, was so composed that when he was about to lose his house, he was like, you know what we should do? We'll learn more. That's a huge lesson. Lesson number 2 that I learned from this is the guy that gave him the 20,000 shekels. You have a guy that goes and finds an apartment from somebody else, from his friend. The first thing that he thinks about is, okay, I just saved myself 20,000 shekel. I don't have to pay the real estate agent. But here you have somebody be like, no, what's right is right. He deserves it. And he went and he gave him the money. Even though he didn't need to, he wasn't obligated to. The third lesson is when the guy received the money that he needed so desperately, he was able to be in such a composure, such a mindset that he would be like, wait a minute, is this really mine or not? Is it really kosher or not? I was reading this story Mika Amcha Yisrael. Where do you have this? It's such an unbelievable level. But this is a level that doesn't come easily. This is a level after years and years of studying and learning and growing in the spiritual aspect and the spiritual, world. If this person is sitting and learning Torah all day, he's sitting around a great environment. His wife is working till noon and then she's coming home and taking care of the kids. And what do they speak about when they finally they're speaking, the whole life is Torah. So they think differently. But let's say you get into a work environment that they think differently, but not that way, the other way. That affects you. That changes who you are. That's something that you're not going to make these decisions over there because you're ingrained. We don't realize how much we get influenced. We get influenced so much. And we have to take this so much into consideration. The Chafetz Chaim, he owned the store. But when he worked in the store, the minute that he had enough money to eat for the day, he closed the store. Can you imagine that? You have a business and it's successful. But you're like, okay, now it's time for me to go learn. I have enough money for the day. Let's close up shop. You have all the customers. Some people go what? They come to the store early and they leave late because maybe there's going to be another customer that's going to come by. Maybe they're going to have over there. They can't go. They got to miss minyan. Why? Because maybe they're going to get another customer. Maybe. Here you have you know what a level of Chafetz Chaim is? The second they had enough money, close up shop and going to learn. There was a kollel in Lakewood it was a guy, who learned in a kollel in Lakewood, and he was looking for a job after he spent quite a few years learning after he got married, and he decided now it's time for Parnasa. He decided he needed a job, so he goes and he starts looking for a job, and he found that the Agudas Yisrael is giving a 30-day course, and then if you take the course, you will probably get a job in Chase Manhattan Bank. So he says, fine. He goes and he takes a job, he takes a course, and he gets instantly hired in Chase, like in Manhattan Bake, like in the Chase, of Manhattan Bake division. And he was like, why was that so easy? Like, he was sitting and learning for that, but I'm pretty sure it should be a little bit more difficult than that. So they explained to him that the president of the bank said that he would hire anybody who had a large number of years of postgraduate studies in a certain very elite school called Beis Medrash Gavaya, BMG in Lakewood. If somebody would go and sit and learn in a certain kollel in Lakewood for a certain amount of years on his resume, and he took a 30-day course, hired on the spot. So they were like, why? Why would he take it? So what happened is that this president hired a person that spent many years in BMG, and then he took this course, and he was so impressed with his work, he was like, wow, this is unbelievable. And then he hired another person who took the course and spent many years learning in BMG, and again, he was extremely impressed. So he came to the conclusion that this yeshiva is like doing something good, and it's causing them to think whatever it was, and he said that if you have this criteria, you get hired. He found out, he was smart, he looked into the statistics, and he saw that these yeshiva graduates performed better than the people that have masters and doctorates in computer science. And therefore, he came to the conclusion anybody learning in BMG has, for a certain amount of years in postgraduate, should be hired on the spot after they take this course. And kachava. And this is not a lone story. This is crazy. There was another story where a person went and he took a computer course. He also sat and learned for quite some time. Afterwards, he decided he needs to support his family. He took a computer course and he found a job in the local Department of Health, in the computer IT department, whatever it was. And he started at the bottom. It was an entry level. And what happened was that one time he was sitting over there and he overheard two people talking. There was a certain issue that came up. And they realized nobody could figure it out how to resolve this issue. So they went from like the lower person to the higher person to the higher person, to finally the guy who was running the department and be like, how do we, we can't fix this situation. And the guy running the department is looking at it and he's like, I don't know, and this is where this Avrech, this Kol guy overheard. He overheard the issue and he overheard it talking to the head of the department. So he goes over and he says, do you mind if I take a look at it? Within a short period of time, he troubleshooted it and he fixed it immediately. And the next time that, this issue came up, they went straight to this guy. Hey, by the way, you fixed the other thing. Can you fix this? And he started fixing one issue after another. Within 6 months, he started entry level. Within 6 months, and by the way, this is Department of Health, which is a city, job. This is not within 6 months, he was the head of the computer department, the head of the entire department within 6 months. And it's like, it's like you hear the stories again and again and again. And, I believe it was Rav Asher Zalek Rubinstein. He said that, you learn be'iyun, you learn in depth, it's going to develop your mind. But then he goes on, he says, if you want to work, learn first for 10 years, then you're going to be able to conquer the world. You're going to be able to conquer Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh. Your mind is going to be sharp from learning. You're going to be able to go and conquer everything. But we see over here, where's the priorities? What should you focus on? But now we have to think about something that we kind of skipped over, and that is career path. So what should you do? So the Chovos HaLevavos goes and says in Shar B'tachon that a person should choose a type of career that they're naturally inclined and interested in. And he gives a mashal from the animal kingdom. So you have different species of animal, they eat and survive on different types of food. For example, there are certain animals that eat vegetations, plants. There are certain animals that eat insects. There are certain animals that eat other animals. And it's very interesting when you look at these animals, the animals that prey on other animals, they have the tools that they need for that. They have the sharp claws, they have the sharp teeth, and those that eat plants, they don't have those tools because they don't need it. You have, somebody, you look at the giraffe, they need to eat things for whatever height it is, they have an extra long neck. There's so many different things that come with whatever the need is of that animal. The Chovos HaLevavos goes and explains that animals are not carnivorous because they have claws and sharp teeth. But rather, Hashem gave them sharp claws and sharp teeth because their nature is that they need to eat meat. So it works the other way around. They got the tools that they need because that's the end goal that they need to reach to. And on the same being, that Hashem gives each and every single one of us a certain inclination, a certain desire for certain activities. And he equips this person with certain necessary tools to succeed in these activities. So what should you pursue? You should pursue the activities that interest you. Again, assuming that it's kosher. You can't say like, oh, I love dealing, not cars. It's so enjoyable to me. Like, no, I love running from the law. I know I'm assuming that everything is kosher. That's what you should go. You should focus on something that you enjoy. The Gemara goes and says that the example that I said, did you ever see a chayar or an oif, a beast or a fowl that earned a trade? They don't work. You never see an animal. You never see a tiger as an accountant. You never see a bird that is I was going to say messenger, but I think kind of in the old days they were. But you never see a bird that, stomps on grapes to make wine. They all survive. They don't have no trouble. So why is it that they, which were created to serve humans, don't need to have this trade, but I do need to? So the answer is because of the Avera that happened by Adam and Chava. That's where the Gemara ends. But when we try to analyze this, why did the Gemara say specifically chaya and oif? Why specifically beast, like wild animals and fowl and birds? The Ein Yaakov goes and answers that what's the difference between a behema and a chaya? A behema is more of a domesticated animal. The Ramban goes and says more like herbivores. They eat more plants. Chayas are more wild, and they are more carnivorous. They are meat eating. What's the difference between that? Domesticated animals that are, like more of the behema aspect, they get their sustenance usually from their owners. You have the cows, the sheep, the goats. They get their food from their owners. While the chayas, the wild ones, where do they get? They're in the wilderness. They receive their food directly from Hashem. Hashem goes and provides for them. So the Kal V'chomer over here that's going on over here is like, look, the Gemara goes and specifically goes and says chaya and oif, not behema. Behema goes, you get it from your boss, the landlord. That over here, specifically chaya and oif, birds and these wild animals, because these animals survive directly from Hashem. So just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu could provide for these wild animals, so too HaKadosh Baruch Hu could provide for us for whatever profession we go and we decide. But then the question that comes up, but you see doctors, lawyers, they seem to be more successful than somebody who's, let's say, not in that level of profession. So the answer is that it works like the man. The man is the more that you take, there's no difference of what you're going to be able to actually utilize. Like there was a certain level, a certain measurement that you were allowed to take for the man. And if you took more and if you took less, you weren't able to gain anything more. The same thing with Panasah, that you could make more money, but you won't have access to that money more than Hashem will allow. Meaning that you could gather as much as you want, but at the end, Hashem will determine how much you will be able to use and what you will be able to benefit from your actual salary. Somebody could go and make $10 million, $20 million, $30 million, but make 4 bad investments, and then they're down to $200,000 or $100,000 of what they would have originally made. And they hustled and they bustled and they did everything they could have done, and they were like, look, but then they lost it all. Or, let me give you even a more common one. They make $20 million, but it sits in their bank and they don't do anything with it. They don't enjoy it. They look at it and they enjoy it. They see all that zeros. It looks nice. But they don't end up doing anything with it. And for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years it's sitting over there. And then what happens? They die and it goes over to whatever their inheritance, whatever it went to. So there's so many ways that we can make more money. And you could make more money than it was intended. But you won't be able to utilize that money. You won't be able to benefit that money. And that's why each profession has people that make it big and have people that make it small, because it doesn't matter then. At the end of the day, it matters what was decreed on Rosh Hashanah that you will make. There was once a person that had a faucet leaking. So he called over a plumber, and the plumber, within 10 minutes fixed it. The plumber says, okay, that will be $250. The guy says, $250? He says, I went last time to a specialist, a doctor who spent 12 years in medical school, and I spent 10 minutes also with him. He only charged me $150. You charge me more than a specialist doctor that spent 12 years in school. And the plumber looks at him and he says, yeah. He says, what do you think? He says, I was also a doctor. I was also a specialist. He says, I closed off my practice and I became a plumber because I make more money this way. You go and you start figuring out what's going to make me the most money, and I'll go to, it's about what's going to be decreed from you. Speaking about doctors, the Gemara goes and says, Taisha B'Reivim L'Gehenim. The best doctors are to Gehenim. Now, why does the Gemara go and use the word Taif? Why the best? Any doctor. No, or non-doctors. Like, why the best doctors? So when you think about it, be like, okay, what, should I not be a doctor? Should I go into the medical field? Not necessarily. In fact, the medical field is it's a very good profession to get into. It's a place of chesed. You have to care for other people. But what happens is, if you're the best of the best, if you're the doctor, you're the best doctor. So there's a little bit of arrogance, there's a little bit of gaiva that comes in over there. So you think that you're perfect. You think that you're not going to make any mistake. So maybe you'll perform treatments that maybe are necessary. Maybe you could misdiagnose. Maybe you could give medications that are contraindicated for this patient and it could cause harm to the patient. And you don't feel you need to consult other doctors or other, I have to say, so I don't know, I'm not going to say that. Well, today I went to get fitted for a crown. I went to my dentist, I had a root canal and I had to get fitted. And I was very impressed with the dentist. And the dentist, he goes over to me and he says, we did the procedure, but I was reviewing your charts and I was reviewing it with the other doctor, my colleague, and we were going back and forth if, maybe I should have done something different. Maybe I should have done something extra. Maybe I did something wrong. And I said, maybe not. And the other doctor said, and he's telling me this. He's telling me this. And he says he's going all through all this, back and forth. And then I was like, oh, okay. He went and he says, I'm going to take for you a bunch of more x-rays and CAT scans. I'm not going to charge you for it. I just want to make sure. And he took a bunch of x-rays and he started showing me. He says, you see, this is what the other doctor says and this is what I say. But Baruch Hashem, this is such an erlich doctor. He says, Baruch Hashem, I see that I was right. I don't have to do anything and it was fine. See, when you have a doctor that thinks that he's all that and is all the best, and he's like the top of the line. By the way, this doctor is the top of the line. And he's like, you think he's all the best? He's like, why am I going to consult with another doctor? You have a little bit of arrogance, a little bit of gaiva, a little bit of like, oh no, you know what I mean? This is, I know what I'm talking about. And that could cause a lot of problems. Besides the gaiva, besides the arrogance, it could cause, misdiagnosing. It could cause, medications that are contrary. It could cause so many problems. And it can endanger life. That's why the Gemara goes and says the best Taiv Shebarayf, the best of the doctors. Why? Because they're the ones who have to be the most cautious. They're the ones who have the problem of gaiva, of the arrogance. But with that mindset, we have to think about it. Okay, so maybe you're not a doctor. But what about anything else in your profession? Maybe somebody comes over to you and be like, did you do the right job? Be like, what are you talking about? I'm very good at what I do. I'm the best at what I do. You get over there, that's arrogance over there. That's also problematic. That's also something that we don't want to get involved in. Taiv Shebarayf and Big Gehenim, a big part of it is because of the arrogance. So what happened is, and we're going to finish up because we're getting a little bit late. You have people that go and work and work and work and work and they don't stop and they can't stop. They didn't call terminology that's called workaholics. They can't stop. If only they would utilize that power to be Talmudic holics, learning Gemara nonstop, or learning Musar holics, nonstop learning Chumash, all nonstop. But they can't, and they stop, and they can't continue with their life. Everything's all about business. Everything is all about work. Rabbi Shmuel Birnbaum, Rosh Yeshiva, which I happen to have a picture of him right over here. I don't know if you could see. This was, oh man, what a tzaddik. This. Whenever you go to the Beis Medrash, he always sat and he was always learning. And oh man, like with piercing blue eyes. Also, like I remember one time I was walking down the aisle and he just looked up at me and I like froze. I'm like, oh, what am I supposed to do now? I don't know. Like I didn't even know that like there's like holiness radiates, from such a holy person. So Reb Shmuel Birnbaum Zechron Lebracha went and he goes and he says, every mitzvah has a shir. Every mitzvah has a required amount. How much matzah you need to eat, how big the lulav should be. Everything has a share. And in every measurement, there's a hiddur mitzvah. There's an enhancement option that you could do. If you add, for example, 1/3 more, as the Gemara in Bava Kama goes and tells us, whether it's in size or expenditure, it doesn't matter. You add a little bit more. So the bottom line is, if you do add more to the mitzvah, more that you need to, Hashem gives you more reward. But there's one mitzvah that if you do more than the share, than the amount allotted, it's a total waste and has no value. And that, says Reb Shmuel Birnbaum, the area of Ishtadlus. He says, if you completed the bare minimum, you are done. And Reb Shmuel Birnbaum goes and he says, the Masmid Adar goes and he says, I'm perplexed by how many questions I get about the matzah, about the lulav, about all the other mitzvot. But the few shilas that I actually get, the most important ones, were like, they would come to the rabbi and be like, did I do the minimum ishtadlus? Did I accomplish? Maybe I could spend more time learning, Rabbi. Did I fulfill my requirement of working? He says, I rarely get those questions. I get the other questions. But these type of questions I don't get. He says, this is what we should be thinking of. Should be thinking about more on the spiritual and less on the physical. I want to finish off with one story. That is, there was a person that approached the Lulavar Rebbe. And he went over to the Rebbe, and he said that he didn't have enough money to provide for his family, so he wanted to move to America in hopes to change his fortune. So the Rebbe responded to him with with a story. He says, once there was a small town where there was a great Talmid Chacham, and he lived in dire poverty. He was a rabbi of the town. And the town people were very poor. They couldn't afford to pay the rabbi. So this rabbi was sitting there and destitute, didn't have enough money. One day, two very wealthy individuals came before this rabbi for a din Torah. They had a question, that they needed a rabbi to resolve. And they presented both information. The rabbi had to look over the details and needed some time to work on it. So they told him, he says, Rabbi, we can't stay here until you come to your decision. Why don't you come to your decision and then come to us to our town and we'll pay you. And they were going to compensate him very handsomely, like give him a lot of money to make that trip. So he goes and he says, let me think about it. Let me go daven mincha and I'll get back to you afterwards. So he goes to daven mincha, and after he finishes mincha, he goes and he says, I'm sorry, but I cannot come with you. Disappointed, the guy said, okay, thank you for your consideration, and they got up and they left. The Rebbitzin, the wife, is listening to this and she starts beginning to cry. And she's like, what are you doing? He says, why are you not going with them? He says, they were offering us money. We don't have any food to put on the table. Why are you not going with them? And even furthermore, she goes and she asks him, she says, why did you wait until after mincha to tell them that? So the rabbi goes and says, I was thinking about it. It says, when I was davening Shemona Esrei, I got up to the bracha of Barech Aleinu, the blessing for parnasa, the blessing for sustenance. And I go and I started thinking, wait a minute, HaKadosh Baruch Hu provides for everybody. Where does he provide for? From Shemayim, very, very far away, the spiritual heaven, the Kisei HaKavod, who knows how far it is. In thousands of years, he goes and he brings it to this earth. And he brings it to me, my parnasa. So it says, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu could give me the parnasa in that town, he could give me the parnasa in this town. And if I'm supposed to make the money, I'll make the money. I don't need to go and I don't need to travel. If I travel, I start losing from my learning. I'm not, I don't need to do that. So the respectful wife said, okay, fine. A short time goes by, a few days go by, and both these guys come back. And it says, Rabbi, we decided that we're going to come back to you. And we decided that, we don't want, we wanted to hear your answer. And they came back and the rabbi told them the answer. And they thanked him, and they gave the rabbi the exact sum that they were going to give the rabbi if he would have traveled over, to their town. So we see over here that the money came to him wherever he was supposed to be. So this rabbi, which was telling over this person who needed money and wanted to go to America to make some money, he said that you don't have to travel to America. Hashem could send us money wherever you are. Whatever business you are, wherever you are, Hashem could send us money. But along these lines, we have to remember what the Chazon Ish says, and with this we'll close. That one should really rely totally on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But also one has to be extremely honest and not fool himself, thinking that his bitachon is more than what it really is. Hashem provides the needs according to the person's true emunah and bitachon and reliance on Hashem. If a person claims to have bitachon, but this trust in Hashem is really superficial and not genuine, he cannot expect Hashem to provide for his needs directly. So yes, we need to have emunah and we need to have bitachon, and even more so we have to work on that being true emunah and true bitachon. But ultimately, we also have to put into our mindset that no matter where we go, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the ability to go and provide with us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the ability to give us anything and everything that we want to. And I'll tell you, with this in mind, my philosophy always to utilize and capitalize on opportunities, whether it's spiritual or whether it's in the physical. Probably the higher level would be that you don't need to capitalize on the physical opportunities because Hashem will send it. But I'm sharing with you my low level of where I'm holding, and that is the level where especially in the spiritual side, that is so important. Always capitalize. You have a mitzvah that comes on your way. Don't push it off. You have an ability to do something. And I'll even give you an example. You guys all came to the live, share, which I thank you all for coming. But you didn't need to. You could have listened to it online. And by the way, you can know for yourself. It's very different when you listen to it live versus when you listen to it recorded, because you're not paying attention so much, and whatever, you're here, you're over there. There's a different level. You capitalize on opportunity. You capitalize on times where you're able to do it. And it shouldn't be only for this. If you have an opportunity to daven, you have an opportunity to do chesed, you have an opportunity to do something, then you have to go and you have to capitalize on it. You really have to go and capitalize. And if you don't, you're losing on so many opportunities. So you may not go and you may not agree with capitalizing in the financial world, in the business world, in the physical world. But at least capitalized, you could capitalize on the spiritual aspect. you can capitalize on the spiritual aspect. And that is whatever comes your way, take it to the bank and do it. If it's a mitzvah or whatever it is, you should go and you should do it. With that being said, you should also keep in mind that at the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that provides. He can make you a billionaire from whatever profession you are in, and he can make you a not billionaire, let's say it that way, from whichever profession you are in. We have to have emunah b'tachon, and we have to, as the Gemara goes, and the Gemara says that we do our shtadlus, we do what we need to do, but at the end, the thing that we need to do is v'yivakesh rachamim lemisha isher v'anechasim shalai. At the end of the day, we have to go and we have to pray for mercy from who actually owns everything, and that is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. With that, we will open up to questions. Okay, that's what we have over here. All right, here we go. First question. I need help. I need to go help my husband with something, but I want to say... okay, never mind. Hold on a second. This is more of a... Okay, let me read this out loud because I'm not getting... I need to go help my husband something. I want to say thank you. I couldn't find Rabbi Z email or contact information, but I was personally struggling. I got a bracha from him a week later. I was proposed to that. Was 1 year and 7 months ago. I got the bracha and I don't believe it's... Oh, wow. Okay, thank you very much. Amazing. Okay, next... there's only one more question. The Gemara says that one is allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael to get married, to find a better Torah learning, and to make a parnassa. Since Hashem can send our money wherever you are, why does the Gemara allow to leave Eretz Yisrael to make a parnassa? That's a great question. So, this is my own answer. That again, I would have to look up to see if this would coincide with what the Mefarshim speak about. But I'll tell you my own answer. That it depends on the level that you are in. That if you are on a high level and you have real emunah and bitachon to a high level, then yes, you could stay wherever you are, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will send it. Assuming that in the normal realm of things it exists, meaning that there are women there or men there that you could go and date, and there's parnasa there that you could do. So in the normal realm, you should do that. But in the level where many people are, unfortunately, is not a level where they sit back and they sit and learn all day, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to send them everything right to their door. Some people are, but most are not on that level. So for that, there are certain criteria that you are allowed to take. That is the hishtadlus. Amen on the bracha. Thank you so much on the bracha. All right. Looks like that was all the questions. Thank you all for joining. Until next week. Another question. You mentioned before that you must do hishtadlut and work, but what about a young person who doesn't really need to make money yet? Is it a lack of bitachon and too much hishtadlut? So that's a good question. So let's say a person is doesn't need to work or doesn't need to make money or for whatever reason. Should they work? So it depends. A person should not stay home doing nothing. That is very personal. We know that I believe the pasuk in Yuv, it says Adam la'amal yulad. A person was created to toil. The pasuk in Yuv tells us that we're not supposed to be sitting back, and we're supposed to work. And if you're sitting at home and you're not doing anything, then it's better to work, better to keep yourself busy. But if you have an opportunity, you're doing something else, you're doing chesed, you're doing something else, so then if you don't need to work, then there's no need to work, then fine. But again, there's a lot of criteria that could come into play. You're about to get married, you want a certain person, so maybe you want to save up a little bit. There's a lot of different criteria, and that is something that has to be spoken about privately on a case-by-case basis. Oh, we have here another question. Should you work more and give tzedakah, or work just enough to learn? The best is to work enough and learn. That's the highest level. Not to work to give tzedakah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of it. The best is to work and learn. Okay, that looks like that was the final question. So thank you all for joining. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless each and every single one of us, that whatever profession you do go and you do decide to do, may you be extremely successful in that profession, and it should be a profession that you enjoy, a profession that you're happy with, and a profession that you'll make tremendous amount of money, and that money will make you closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu.